Hey all you Hillmaniacs, it's Hillmanator, and today I'm going to be talking about the 5 most expensive things that you'll have to put up with while at university. I'm not going to include tuition fees because you don't really deal with them while you're at uni. You could deal with them afterwards once you've got a strong, steady paying job. I'm also not going to be including anything that, you know, most people don't do, because why would I? So by far the most expensive thing that you have to deal with at university is going to be your rent. It costs a considerable amount. I worked it out earlier, and consider this. I paid for a 40-week contract with one of the cheapest styles of housing that this university has, which has considerably cheaper housing than every other place in the region, as far as I'm aware, which has even cheaper housing than everything down south. My accommodation costs for this year is £4,120. That's about half of what I get paid by Student Finance Wales, and for those of you who get paid by Student Finance England, yeah, that's scary. To put it into perspective how much the accommodation at university costs in comparison to the regular world, what one of my family members pays for their house in the course of, say, a month, I pay more than that in 2 weeks. Now, not much more, but a little bit more. And it kind of sucks. Of course, I just have the most basic style of room, and if you want a superior ensuite or a studio apartment or some other variety, then it's going to cost you even more. While your rent does include things like utilities and, you know, electric, internet, water, gas, you know, if you have gas. We have an electric oven. I love it. It's just the best. While it does include all of those things, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily safe, because you also have to pay a significant amount in deposit. And if you do any amount of damage to your university room, which is entirely possible, then you won't get your deposit back. And that's a lot of money. For me, it's about £200 in deposit. So your rent and housing accommodation is going to cost you a lot over the course of this year. The next most expensive thing at university is another necessity. You can't avoid paying for these things. You need food. It's important. Everyone needs food. Now, there are ways you can make it cheaper, you can go bargain hunting, and I generally recommend buying in larger portions, because generally it works out that you've got more food for less price. For example, pasta. If you're buying a 1 kilo bag of pasta, you might find that it turns out that it's like 76p per 100 gram, which is still considerably pricey, but we're going with hypothetical pasta shop here. Contrast that with this 3 kilo bag of pasta, which is considerably heavier, but it has far more pasta in it, and that might only cost you about 54 pence per 100 grams. Now in this circumstance, it's definitely far more beneficial to get the 3 kilo than the 1 kilo, because you're just going to end up spending less in the long run. Remember, it doesn't always work. Fresh foods, it's not going to work with because they run out of date, and then you're just left with a whole load of fresh food that you can't use, and it's no good, and what's the point? Of course, just because something is out of date doesn't necessarily mean that it's gone bad. I would recommend looking into the exact science of it and making sure that the thing that you're dealing with is still good. Like, don't just blindly eat everything. If it's gone past its date, then you definitely need to double check it, because it really runs a risk of being dangerous. But if it still looks good, smells good, probably going to be alright. There's a crucial test you can do with milk, which is pour a little bit out into a cup. Has it gone into a like solidy form? No? Still tastes like milk? Great, you can have more milk. You've got milk. Yeah! I wouldn't recommend using things that are significantly past their date, but if they've only gone past by a little bit, or if they've been in the freezer, then you might be alright, and it's worth checking. But yes, food is one of the most expensive things that you have to deal with at university. Next up is the thing that all students dread, which is also probably why we all really stink. Laundry. Circuit have a virtual monopoly on laundry in university towns. There's really nowhere else I could go in Lancaster. I know in some cities you might find another laundrette which might be cheaper, but in general, Circuit is the only one you can actually deal with, and these guys, they like to charge a lot. Now, $2.50 per wash and $1.20 per dry doesn't seem unreasonable until you realise how much you can actually fit into each load before they don't really wash and dry properly, and also how much you're going to have to pay for the product that you have to put into the washing machines in order for it to actually wash. Personally, I recommend getting pods. They're far easier and it just saves you a lot of hassle working out with the new system. Plus sometimes they can work out cheaper. But the real problem is the machines themselves. The machines cost quite a bit on their own. Like, for me, I have to use at least 3 machines to do all of my washing, 3 machines to do all of my drying. That makes each wash of mine, at cheapest, £10.50 to get all of my laundry done. You see the problem? Laundry is something that we have to continuously do, and for those of us who are particularly, I don't know, say, slightly overweight and, you know, not necessarily unsweaty, yeah, we have to do laundry a lot. So it can really add up, and the problem is, you don't have an alternative. They own your life. I have heard other students say that if they were being mugged, they would genuinely tell the mugger to take this Circuit card because it's worth more than the stuff in their wallet. Circuit takes a considerable amount of any student's money. It's kind of ridiculous, but we have no alternative. At number 4, you have something that's very specific to the people who are directly involved in it, and that is nights out. Now, I'm going to include this on the list despite the fact that not everyone does them, because I feel like the majority of students are going to go on a night out at some point, and even if you don't drink, chances are you can still go out just, you know, buying fizzy drinks instead. So I'm still going to include this. Now, the problem with nights out is for every club that you want to go into, you're going to have to pay entry, more or less. University towns generally don't have free entry on most things. It's kind of rare in terms of clubs because they know that students are going to pay. And then they can really overcharge you because once you've paid to go in, you're not just going to leave. I mean, why would you leave? You're going to have to pay to go in somewhere else, and that would just make no financial sense. So you might as well stay here and, you know, get overcharged for every drink. This can particularly suck for those of you who are like me in that you can hold your alcohol, but unlike me in the fact that you really, 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 really like to get drunk every single time you go out, because you're just gonna end up having to pay a lot. That's the way it is. Even for those of you who just drink fizzy drinks when you go out and aren't going to order like a vodka Meister 3000 or whatever, it's still going to be pricey. Clubs overcharge on non-alcoholic beverages too. Not as much as alcohol, I will freely admit that, but even if you're just going for a Coke, you're still going to end up paying a reasonable amount. And quite often they will have a card machine that doesn't allow for less than £5 transactions, which means that you will have to have at least a £5 transaction, which isn't great when you're just trying to order pop, because that means you need to get multiple drinks at one time. Nights out are always expensive, and that is why so many university students do preying as a big thing. Now obviously I'm sure many of you are far more aware of what the deal is with preying than I am, because I didn't party at high school. Yay for the kids who just stayed inside.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Regardless, nights out, even if you do pre considerably, are going to be expensive. Next up on the list, books. Even tiny thin books like this can end up costing you quite a bit. I believe this cost me $12.99 just for this one book, which for a regular book isn't too bad, but consider how thin that is, and also the size of the font. I'm not sure if you can't really see it, but it's got reasonable font. So basically I'm paying a lot of money for not much book, but I need this book for my course, so I don't really have an alternative. Now of course all of the books are valuable, they all are really useful, and sometimes you can get them on a great deal, but not always. Both me and my dad ended up paying more than 40 quid for the books that I need for my course, and that's with considerable bargain hunting. Now, you won't necessarily need books for your course, and sometimes you can just find the books in the library. So don't necessarily, as soon as you get your reading list, go out and buy them. See if you can find them somewhere, because that will save you some money. But books, academic texts, are blooming expensive. Now another fun thing that professors sometimes like to do is to get you to read their works, which I can't think of a possible reason why. You know, they can't get anything out of it.
We've got to have money.
But it can be a bit of a pain when you have to buy all of these books and they're just blooming expensive. Now, not all of them are going to cost you. Some of the times you don't even need them. Some courses don't have books, but for mine, for a lot of humanities courses, especially if you're doing English Lit, ouch. So that was it. Those were the 5 things that are going to cost you an awful lot of money at university. Now, there are probably things that are going to cost more. I don't know though, hopefully not, because I need this cash so that I can go to New Zealand. Please, I need it. Don't give me random charges now. The reason why I made this video this week is because I had really mucked up in my invoices. So when I was looking at them and trying to pay my rent for this term, I misread, and I thought that my tuition fee for some reason meant that I had to pay it, because I didn't see a little tick. Basically there's one tick where it says student finance pays this, you don't have to. I missed that tick, so for about 20 minutes I was panicking, believing that I would have to pay the university £5,000, which I didn't have. It's all been sorted and it's perfectly fine. I have enough money for this term, and hopefully I shall have enough for, you know, the future in general. So basically this video came about because I've been a complete idiot and missed looking at something. Try and save up a little bit of money if you can before coming to university. I attempted to, I did, but then I spent it all on food and DVDs and just things that I didn't need. But please make sure that your finances are going to be fine. Look into different ways of saving so that you will have enough money at university. I hope this was useful for someone. I don't know how it would be, but good luck. Okay, thanks for watching all. I shall catch you next time. Circuit have more or less a complete monopoly. Whoops.